There are leaders in the world who are made for impact.
If we want to see them be vulnerable, be transparent, it starts with us. Really, that's how the conversation gets going. In that, of course, they know as the leader, you're connecting everything back to mission, vision, goals, values, and our key results indicators. However, I care about you as a person, and I'm going to give you all that you need to reach these goals that you maybe otherwise did not think you were able to reach.
I'm Gretchen Schott, and this is Made for Impact, a show for leaders who want to leave a lasting impact on their organizations, their teams, and their lives. My guest today is Dr. Clint Parker. He's the Dean and Assistant Professor for the School of Leadership and Business at Pillar College. He's also the President and CEO of LeaderLift. He has a PhD in philosophy from Regent University, and he has a Master's of Health Administration from Seton Hall. With over 25 years of experience, he has helped to lead and educate individuals on performance and servant leadership. I think you're going to be motivated and inspired by his passion around this topic of servant leadership and transformation. Take a listen. Oh, Dr. Clint, I'm so grateful that you joined the show today and you're going to share all your wisdom with us. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to be here, and I hope and pray that I can add value and really help people on their leadership journey. So thank you for having me.
Well, we met a couple weeks ago through a connection, and I got to hear a little bit about your story and your experience. But for my listeners who maybe haven't met you or don't know you, could you give just a little bit of a background about who you are, where you're from, what got you into this work?
Yes, absolutely. I'm born and raised, I'm a native New Yorker, so go Knicks. And I served in the United States Navy for 4 years, and there I operated as a boiler technician. I was responsible for the boiler operations on a large aircraft carrier. And after being discharged from the United States Navy, I got into healthcare. And in healthcare, one of the first questions that I asked, starting as a individual contributor, I asked, how do I get promoted? What do I need to do to advance? And within 3 to 4 months, I was promoted to a lead role. And then probably 9 months after that, I was promoted to a supervisory role. And then from there, I began my journey to really learn about how to be an effective leader. So as I continued to work in that role, I then got an opportunity to teach in a public school system. And there I taught in a vocational setting where I taught special needs students from the ages of 14 to 21, helping them get prepared for the workplace and really have the opportunity to develop individuals who later became leaders in their professions. And as I continued to grow and develop in healthcare leadership, I also am a leader in church leadership. I function in a pastoral capacity, and there I see that the leadership principles that I use not only in a church setting, the same principles apply in a work setting. Because I love leadership and love to learn about leadership, my master's degree focused on management, and then later my PhD is organizational leadership. And there I was able to really fine tune and hone my leadership skills. And because I'm a teacher at heart, whatever information I have, knowledge I have that can help elevate the performance of others, I just, so as I freely received, I freely give. So whatever I can do to lift the performance of others, lift others in their lives, that's what I love to do. And that's what I'm committed to doing. So it's a privilege, I see it, to really help people in leadership, help people in churches, help people in the communities, and just try to make a difference that kind of way.
That is a lot. So there's a couple of things that you shared that I want to dig into a little bit more. Thank
Sure.
you for your service. Coming out of military service, I mentioned if there's veterans or people listening to the show, what advice would you give to help individuals transition out of military service into a business environment?
The first thing I encourage individuals to do is really just get a sense of what it is that you'd like to do. Do you want to see your military training carry over?
Mhm.
Or if you function in a leadership capacity, because in the military, probably within the second or third year, across branches, you have an opportunity to serve in a leadership role.
Mhm.
And one of the things that organizations do know is some of the best leaders come out of the military.
Mhm.
And I would encourage individuals who are in a leadership role, look for an industry or a sector that you may be interested in and get in. How you can get in: ground floor, individual contributor. Let it be known that you have leadership capacity. I'm certain they'll tap into it when you demonstrate you're going to bring value.
Whenever I teach classes, I can almost always tell a student that has previous military experience, right? Because some people are very proud and they like wear it right on their sleeve and they'll tell you right up front.
Right.
Others, they don't really tell you, but when you hear them talking about like accountability or you hear them talking about, chains of command and authority or even
Yes,
just
yes,
approaching
yes.
teamwork, there are certain things you're like, you've probably been in the military, right? I have for a long time advised people like look at people who've been in the military to take on leadership and management roles within your organization because they've not only been educated but they have lived it in some way, sometimes in really poor ways. They didn't like who their manager was, and so they've learned lessons, and sometimes they've had great experiences too, and they're bringing that in now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, interestingly enough, every place I worked, without exception, someone or many people would come up to me and say, "Were you ever in the military?"
Military.
So I don't know if it's the confidence with which I walk. I don't know if it's my haircut, the shine on my shoes. I don't know.
Right.
But some reason they ask, "Hey, were you in the military?" So, I mean, every place I've ever worked.
But I also want to talk about, so you shared also that you work like pastoral type of leadership. And so my
Yes.
question for you is, how do you see leadership in like a pastoral setting different than in a business setting? Or do you?
There are significant differences. I would probably say the main difference is the first and foremost similarity is that, of course, it's the people business. And the way that you're able to lead a team effectively starts with relationships.
Mhm.
But the stark difference to me is in the church capacity, there are well meaning people who are in roles for which they may not have the skill sets. And it's not as simple as saying, let us reassign you. This could be someone who's been there for 25 years.
Yeah.
Their grandparents started the church, or, so there are tons of factors. So you have to figure out how to maneuver around those issues to be able to help the church move forward. That's the biggest thing. And then it's not just one or two people. There are quite a few people who are well intentioned, good hearted people who saw a gap and said, let me jump in and help.
Mhm.
But the challenge sometimes is as time moves on, they don't progress with the time, right? And so they're in a role that requires progression and they're not effective, which then affects the entire organization. It's a huge challenge. Huge.
And I know for myself, I'm very involved with my church and I have volunteered in a number of capacities in a number of different ways. And I think that something that I had to learn through my own leadership journey was there are times when I have said I'm a better leader at church than anywhere else because I'm not necessarily wedded to my own reputation or anything like that because it's his work, it's not my work, right?
Right,
And
right,
the only place I'm trying to go is heaven, right? So like as long as
right.
I'm doing things to head that way, that's good. Whereas in
Sure.
business we get messed up. But I also had to learn that even though I have skills and I might be gifted in things like administration or organization or speaking, it doesn't also mean that I have to deploy them all the time. And that there were times where it's like I was serving in some ministries for years and years and years and years and years, and then finding myself feeling like exhausted and maybe even a little resentful because it was like, I just didn't want to do it anymore. I had grown and it was time for someone else to step in, but then feeling the guilt that comes along with serving in that way. And I had a really good friend who had shared with me, she said, you just need to find the right way to say no. Because I was like, how can I say no? When the youth minister asks me to do something and helping, like, I feel like I'm saying no to God. And like, that's not my plan. She had said, you need to say, thank you so much. I don't feel called to serve in that way. Right. And I was like, oh, that is brilliant.
Right.
Right. Like that
Right.
felt authentic to me.
Right.
And
Right.
it was received so well.
Absolutely. That's the winning formula.
Yeah. You've done so many things in your life. I'm curious, where in your life do you feel like you've made an impact?
Fortunately, I think I've made an impact everywhere I've been. So, let's take a look at school. When I taught in the vocational school, I'll specifically reference one individual who they were ready to expel from the school. So our district had about 4 different campuses. They moved him from campus to campus and then sent him to me pretty much as a last resort, a formality before they said, Mr. Parker, do you want to take on the student? Please don't go out of your way. If he doesn't cut it, let us know and he'll be gone in a week or two. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll gladly work with the students. So, of course, the first thing that I did with the student was had a conversation to get a understanding of who he was. And long story short, the student had so many needs in his life: economic, social, psychosocial. You go down the list. He had a need for belonging,
Yeah.
a need of affirmation. You go down the list: single parent household, brothers incarcerated, just a lot happening.
Yeah.
So for me, my perspective was it was just applause worthy that he made it to school. This was a student who never missed a day.
Well,
And they thought he came to school to wreak havoc on everyone. No, school was his haven,
yeah.
his safe place. So, long story short, he grew very quickly in my class. There was a certain way you had to communicate with him. He was very smart.
Mhm.
So, he just needed to understand why and understand the logic and,
Yeah.
a brief explanation, nothing heavy. Hey, do this because of that. Real simple. And he grew in my class. He was with me for 3 years, and he became so good at what he did that when I left education and went back into management, I offered him job opportunities everywhere I went. So this individual who everyone was willing to give up on, he did graduate. I was his family member who attended his graduation. Even though as faculty we were required to go, I came in support of him, and he worked with me every place I've been. And here was someone who they were ready to discard and now earning $100,000 a year.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That alone made my tenure in education worth it, right? And, in church, I pastored 3 churches, excuse me. And there we were able to impact people, do work in the community, help in every way that we can. And in our church now, my wonderful wife of 31 years in October, who is my better half. And when I say she's my better half, I mean that wholeheartedly.
Uh,
She's just flat out incredible. Anyway, she's the executive director of a breast cancer support network who partnered with our church. And we're doing that work together as well. She's the point person and, of course, the brains of the operation. But these are other ways where we're helping women of color get access to the kind of support that they need during the trauma of breast cancer, right? And so making a difference, when we had the opportunity to partner, no thought, let's do it, right? We give food to the community, on and on the list goes. And then in the workplace, one of the main contributions I make every place that I've had the opportunity to lead is creating a leadership pipeline where willing leaders, people with potential that's untapped, we help to tap into it. And I was fortunate to be able to help dozens of individuals get promotions and do better for their families and get opportunities in life. So that's what I do. So now in education, we're rebuilding the School of Leadership and Business at Pillar College and looking forward to this journey where we're going to empower students to make a difference in the worlds in which they serve and work.
You talked about so many things there that get me excited: leadership pipelines and servant leadership.
Yes.
Do you and your wife, did you intentionally decide to be leaders of service, or how did that come about for you? It's one thing, I think, to be servant hearted and want to give, but then to also be like this little couple that's a power couple of like giving back in the community. Like,
Sure.
those aren't always the easiest conversations. So how did that come about?
Yes. In church leadership, because of my gift of teaching and my ability to communicate, which of course is God given for sure, 100%, 1000%. As I continued to teach and lead, then that was kind of the natural evolution, if we could say. And so there was a church that lost their pastor suddenly. And, we happen to have a relationship. And my pastor asked me to go over there and minister each and every Sunday, for the next several weeks. And then they asked us, would we consider being there permanently? And so we did. And we stayed there for 2 years. And then after that, we took time off. And then now we're at our current church where we have been for about 9 years. Let's call it a progression. As my abilities and gifts were identified, this was the way I could make a greater contribution to this group of people.
Yeah, I love it. What would you say then is the thread that you can pull from your personal life kind of into your professional life? And I don't know if that's a professional life as a faculty member or a CEO or a pastor. You pick which one of those are, but what's the thread that pulls them together?
I think the thread that pulls them all together, let's call it a thread of three strands, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I would think that a discipline for sure. I try to be disciplined as best as I could. I always believe in elevation. How can we get to that next level? How do we win? How can we, progress and advance? That's always been my mode of operation everywhere. I don't see stagnancy as a part of my DNA, sitting still, staying still, not growing. So growth and progression is always a part of what I do. And also just the desire to share. So as I learn and grow, I want to bring people along with me and help and share things that helped me be successful, things that have helped me grow, that have taken me to the next level. And hopefully they grab on. And we have seen quite a few people, advance and move up and do different things in life because we gave a helping hand.
Yeah. I want to dig into this idea of servant leadership, though, just a little bit. What do you believe are the most significant benefits of adopting a servant leadership approach within a business context?
First and foremost, understanding that servant leadership is really about focus and mindset, right? And it's this idea that I'm concerned about the needs of the people on my team. I'm concerned about them as human beings, not as resources. And in doing that, my goal is to help unlock their potential, to help them be the best version of themselves. Now, the reason that's so important is because I think sometimes in organizations, leaders can put the cart before the horse. They are focused on key performance indicators. I get it. I am a numbers person all day long, so I totally get that. Focused on the goal, focused on the mission, focused on the vision. Okay, no problem. I'm with all of that as well. But at the end of the day, I love the way that Larry Bossidy put it in his article with Noel Tishi and Ram Sharan. He said, at the end of the day, companies bet on people, not on strategy. So what that means is if your company's going to win or your organization's going to win, you have to take care of the people.
Yeah.
You have to and show a genuine care and concern about the people you're leading, right? So it's not just about, did you make your numbers? What are the barriers? Why did we have a down month? It's, how are you doing? What can I do to help you? Do you have a superpower that we've not tapped into that you would find fulfillment in helping the organization? Care about the person. And I believe that a leader should, at the very least, know basic information about their direct reports. I'm not saying digging deep into their personal matters, but knowing about the people you're leading, right? I think that's important. We had a situation in a previous organization where one of our leaders, she was super solid, reliable, clockwork, does everything that you asked. She worked like clockwork. She was on her game, solid leader. And we saw her performance drop off. It just plummeted immediately. It was like a sudden plummeting. So we said this wasn't her. We knew something was going on. And we already knew about her as a person, but we said, let's find out what's happening here. And when we spoke with her, we found that she had faced a sudden death in her family. Her son had passed away.
Oh.
And because her son had passed away and she was getting up there in age, she had to take care of his children. And there was nobody else to take care of his children.
Yeah.
And there were financial limitations and all this. So all of this weighed down so heavily and suddenly on her, it affected her performance. So we as leaders, we found ways to try to direct her to help, get some other people involved to see how we could support her. But normally in other organizations, they might have just kind of wrote her about her performance, having performance discussions and warning notices. No, we cared about the person, what's happening in your life, and how do we help you? And we did all that we could to help her, and she got back on track. But it was tough sledding for her, and we tried to take that journey with her because we truly cared about her. And what Rod Wagner talks about in his book entitled Widgets, excellent read. And when I spoke with him about this idea of employee engagement, one of the things he said was, in order for employees to be fully engaged, there has to be this idea of caring and meeting their personal needs. And what happens as a result is there is reciprocation, where you don't have to keep writing them about goals and all this. They begin to care about the organization so much because you care about them as human beings, that they now become the gatekeepers. They police the slackers.
Right.
They're like, whoa, ho, look, we're working hard here. You're not getting the job done.
Yeah.
You need to ramp up. But that happens when you care about the people. So that's really what servant leadership does. The focus of servant leadership is really motivated by this care for the people who are your direct reports, the people you lead. You care about them. And it's also this sense of humility that they have something to bring to the table. So maybe their ideas may be a little different than yours, but humility says, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Let me hear what they have to say. And then this opens up the door and creates this atmosphere of psychological safety. And this now opens the floodgates for more ideas, right? And so when you have all of these minds pouring fresh ideas to the table, that's why you have the Googles of the world dominating their spaces, because individuals, they're tapping into the brain trust of the people because they created this psychologically safe environment that was started by caring for the people, right? And so one of the leaders who I had promoted to just a more significant level of responsibility, we had a KPI, a key performance indicator, that we were doing well. We were hitting targets. We felt we could do better. I believed that my approach was getting us to where we needed to go. We just had to keep writing it out. He said to me, look, if you let me do this, just let me handle it, I promise you, we're going to get to our destination much faster. He said, give me this opportunity. So I said, you got it. So long story short, we saw a 75% gain in that KPI because I was humble enough to say, go ahead and do it.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's what servant leadership does. It's that sense of humility. Hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Everyone else has gifts, skills, talents, insights, passion, desire to the table. Give them that shot and empower them to do what they need to do. And that's what happens. So I'm a big fan of servant leadership because I believe that it's transformational when it's applied properly.
You mentioned something about part of your definition of kind of servant leadership is about unlocking potential in others.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, as I have managers listening to this show, I imagine they would be interested to get your thoughts, maybe some tips and strategies on how do you do that? How do you help someone unlock their potential? I know for myself, I have been guilty of wanting something for someone who works for me more than they want it for themselves, and then getting so frustrated because they're not seeing the potential that I see, right? So,
Right.
what
Right.
strategies do you have in unlocking somebody's potential?
Absolutely. With great question. First and foremost, with servant leadership, it's all about relationship first, right? And this means that in that relationship, as the leader demonstrates what is called in transformational leadership, exemplary leadership, you're creating this atmosphere of trust by demonstrating trustworthy behavior that someone's willing to follow. You start with that relationship, and it's as simple as just getting to know your direct reports. I mean, getting to know them personally, not too deep. I mean, you go where they want to go, but you want to know that, hey, one of these people on your team, got a son or daughter graduating,
Mhm.
or this person on your team is caring for their sick grandparent, or whatever it is, right? Because then you can demonstrate your care by saying, "Hey, how's your son doing in school?" Or "How did the graduation go?" Or "How's your grandparent doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Anything I can do to help you?" Right? And so then that's what creates that trust. So now when that trust happens, now there's more open conversation because they feel that they can talk with you. And the way that you unlock their potential is you have to know what their superpower is. And that superpower would be defined as that gift or skill that could make a difference in your organization that they will do effectively, do passionately, and do for free.
I love
Yeah, where they say, I don't care, yeah, hey, I'd love to do this. And you give them that opportunity to do that. So I had a situation where one of the individual contributors, this organization I was working with, they were struggling with process, a training and development process. So one individual who was directly impacted by that negatively, he has a superpower of teaching and training, but he's doing other things.
Yeah.
So you unlock that by giving him the opportunity to train and develop. Of course, he needs to be shown how to do that, and he expressed his desire to do that, but that only happens with the conversation, the trust conversation. So you can't unlock the superpower or the potential if that trust is not there because you're not going to know what it truly is. Maybe I may see something that they could potentially do well, but is this their superpower? Is this what they can do with excellence, do it effortlessly, do it passionately, and willing to do it for free?
Yeah.
I just do this because I love it.
Right.
Of course, you want to compensate fairly and all that, but
Right. Right.
I'm
Right.
just talking about the idea behind it, the concept. So, in doing that, then you create the space for them to use that. That's why you keep it within the framework of the organization, right? What is that skill or gift that you'd like to deploy?
I really like the way you talked about that too, because if you're in relationship with someone and you're in relationship with your employee and you know them, even maybe beyond kids' names or no kids or spouse or no spouse,
Right.
people that are important to them. But then you also know things like how do they spend their time outside of work? Maybe you've got someone that loves to play music, right? And so perhaps they have some gifts within understanding harmony and rhythm of how things should run, and so then pulling that out of them and saying, "Help us find the rhythm of this team," right? I love that. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why that's so important. So, in my leadership journey, before I started my own consulting and coaching practice, Whenever I hired any leaders who I hired, the first thing I did before they were onboarded, their first day, is I took them to lunch. And we would sit down and chat, get to know each other, hear about family, hear about hobbies, hear about all of that. And then that gives me an idea on how I could best serve them and how I can best lead them. And when we went to lunch, my lunches with my newly hired managers, definitely 2 hours at
Yeah.
least, a minimum of 2 hours, probably some as long as three and a half, where they said lunchtime's over now. You guys got
We're cleaning
you know,
up.
we gotta
You
we gotta
go.
get ready for dinner, right?
Yeah, would you
We
look at the
gotta
dinner menu now? Yes.
right. And so I think that's a critical piece. And when they see that relationship from day one, it then begins to foster that kind of trust where you can now have those other kinds of conversations effortlessly, seamlessly, where they just evolve. Yeah. So when I'm meeting with my any of my leaders individually about their performance, our weekly report outs, first thing I ask them when I'm sitting with them individually, how was your weekend? How's your wife doing? How's your husband doing? How's your family? What you do this weekend? And then I tell them what I did. And we show pictures. We open it up our phones. So we probably spent about 10 or 15 minutes on that, where we have to kind of reel it back in and, and get down to the real business. But I think that's the valuable piece of it because, again, that relationship building is just continuing to happen. And one of the things I think is not talked about as much with the servant leadership construct is that reciprocation or that reciprocal commitment. Because what's vital is when you are leading a team, you want them committed not to your position, you want them committed to you, the person.
Mhm.
Because for your position, I love the way Rod Wagner puts it, you have some people who will do just enough to not get fired.
Yes, minimal.
And so if they're just committed to your position, you're going to have people who do just enough not to get fired. But when they're committed to you, the person, to Gretchen, then they're going to run through walls for you. They're going to go that extra mile for you. They're going to, hey, I could call out today, but you know what? We're working on this project. We got to win. We got to get it done.
Yeah.
Let me push. See, that's what you get from servant leadership. And that's the part of the construct that I think is worth expansion, that reciprocation.
I was literally going to say, what challenges or obstacles do you see? And I love that you spoke into that. And I also think that there's a lesson there for managers as well. Managers make the mistake of believing they have this great relationship with their employees because they have shared, me as the manager, I've shared so much with you as the employee, and they feel so connected because my team knows me, my team knows how I work, but it's not the other way. So a tip would be, as a manager, are you sharing about yourself to the same level and degree that your employees are sharing? Or are you asking your employees to be vulnerable and share with you, and yet they couldn't say the same things about you, right?
Right. And I think that's a natural build in. Let's use the Kuz and Posner model where they talk about modeling the way. If we want to see them be vulnerable, be transparent, it starts with us. Really, that's how the conversation gets going.
Right.
Right. And in that, of course, they know as the leader, you're connecting everything back to mission, vision, goals, values, and our key results indicators. However, I care about you as a person, and I'm going to give you all that you need to reach these goals that you maybe otherwise did not think you were able to reach.
Yeah. Before I let you go, if individuals are interested in connecting with you, or maybe they are so inspired by your servant leadership now they want to become your student and they want to join your school of leadership, what are the best ways for people to get in touch with you?
Two ways. One is depending on what they want. If they would like executive coaching, if they would like discussions, guidance, training, and development, that would be LeaderLift. So go to leaderlift.net and go to the book of call. It'll put you on my calendar. We can discuss it. We can have that conversation there. If someone's looking for formal education, I'm telling you now, we are rolling out a transformational leadership certificate. It's graduate level, so it's 510 through 50, but it's appropriate for bachelor's level or anyone who's currently in a leadership role. And I am telling you, this is going to be a difference maker in leadership education, 15 credits, and we cover 5 key areas. We cover exemplary leadership. Each learner will take the multi-factor questionnaire to find out where they land as a transformational leadership, where on the spectrum they land. And then they will also take an ethical leadership survey.
Oh, I love it.
And the 5 course, and we do that to assess where they are at the beginning and see how they land at the end. So the certificate program is 1 year. Each course is 8 weeks, and we cover 5 key areas. We cover exemplary leadership, how to become that leader that people will follow because they trust.
Mm-hmm.
We cover inspirational motivation, how to get your team to be inspired to do things they don't necessarily want to do.
Yes.
And then we would also go over cultivating critical thinking. How do we think in a way that we make all of the right moves? And then we will also lean into individualized influence or individualized leadership. And this is where they learn how to take an individualized approach to leading, not a herd or one size fits all mentality, where you lead each individual based on who they are and where they are and what they need. So you see a lot of servant leadership in there, although it's transformational in construct. And then lastly, ethical leadership is the last session. And what's so important and what's so valuable about this course is not only the theoretical framework really strong, but we're going to communicate it in easy to understand terms, because the goal here is for these individuals taking this course to go back to their leadership environments and begin winning right away, taking what we're learning and winning right away. So our teaching model will be based on the Harvard case study model, where they will be immersed in actual business problems and applying the leadership, transformational leadership principles to rise their organizations out of that problem. And because it's going to be cohort based, each learner will have an opportunity to serve as a group leader because all of the work is group assigned. And we've taken that pedagogical approach because in organizations, you work as teams.
Yes.
So each one will have an opportunity to be a leader. They will be assessed using our transformational leadership matrix. And then during the entire matriculation, they will be developing a toolkit. And this toolkit will be their go-to guide. So when they're in the throes of leadership, when the bullets are firing, when the smoke is rising, they have tools they can go to and win in that situation. So I am so excited about this program. It is launching in September, and I am telling you, it is going to be extraordinary. So I'm going to teach the first iteration, all 5 classes. I'll have an apprentice professor with me, but I'm going to teach that first iteration, and I'm going to stay close to the action. And I am telling you, it is going to be amazing. And I assure you that everyone who goes through this course will go to their organizations and win big.
I love it. Dr. Clint, it's been so wonderful talking with you and learning from you. I took a bunch of notes, and so grateful for the time today. Thank you so much for joining.
And thank you for the invitation. And please, anything I can do to help, I'm here to serve. And whatever I can do to be a resource, please feel free to call me at any time. I'm delighted to assist, help, and support. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Wow. What an enthusiastic man. I loved what he said about servant leadership being focus and mindset and unlocking the potential for the people who work for us. I loved what he said about finding someone's superpower. It's so good. That was so rich. And the whole concept of reciprocal relationship and reciprocal trust and how that can make us just better servant leaders. I thought that was great. But I also really loved his military background. And so that's my challenge for you right now. If you're listening to this, I'd love for you to share this episode with somebody that you know in the military, has been in the military, and I'd love to get their thoughts on what they think about what Dr. Parker had to say. Maybe if you're trying to hire right now, you take a look at some folks that have served in our armed forces and help them find roles within our organizations. Are you getting my newsletter? If you're not, please check out my website and sign up to get my monthly newsletter where I dive deeper into all of these topics. If you are a fan of the show, I would love it if you would let us know. Give me some likes, write a review, share the show. We're trying to get 200 reviews of the show by the end of this year, and I would love it if you would let us know if you liked this episode. And even if you didn't, I'd love to hear that too. So please take some time, give us a review, pass this on to people you think can benefit from it. But most importantly, I want you to remember, you are made for impact.